Morning, sir. So, our topic is about matriarchal and patriarchal communities in the Philippines. First, what is matriarchal? Matriarchal community, simple definition is a matriarchal community is a society where women, especially mothers or elder females, have central roles in leadership, family decisions, and inheritance. These communities often follow matrilineal systems, meaning property and family names pass through the mother's side. While not fully matriarchal in the strict anthropological sense, example, women holding former power, some indigenous and ethnic groups display matriarchal or matrilineal traits, where women play central roles in family or community. For example, we have the Minangkabao-inspired communities in southern Mindanao. Some Muslim communities like those in Tawi-Tawi or Sulu show traces of matrilineal traditions inherited from Austronesian ancestors, although Islam introduces patriarchal elements. Second example are the Cordillera people in northern Luzon. Ifugao and Kalinga tribes of women often manage land and rice terraces, which are inherited matrilineally in some areas. Women participate in decision-making in community and family life. And the last one is the Blaan, Tibuli, and Manobo in Mindanao. Women in these indigenous groups often hold respected roles as healers, shamans, or spiritual leaders. In Tibuli society, women can inherit property and traditional art roles. Example is dreamweaver. How matriarchal communities came about in the Philippines. Matriarchal traits in the Philippines date back to pre-colonial times around before the 1500s, long before the Spanish arrived in 1521. These practices were part of early Austronesian societies which settled in the Philippines as early as 3000 BCE or before Christ era. So, the roots of matriarchal influence go back thousands of years, well before foreign powers built patriarchal systems, when women had important roles in society as leaders, landowners, and spiritual guides. These traditions were part of early Austronesian culture. Even after colonization introduced more patriarchal systems, many families stayed matriarchal with mothers and grandmothers playing strong roles at home in the community.
This time, I'll be talking about the unique and significant role of matriarchal practices in the Philippines. So, bago pa man po tayo sa copy ng mga Espanyol o kahit anong mananakop dito sa Pilipinas, ay makikita na po natin dito sa atin makikita po na po dito na mayroon pong mga naganap na matriarchal practices sa Pilipinas mga unang panahon pa po. So, isa na po dito noong 3000 BCE, Austronesian groups had settled in the Philippine island, bringing with them community structure where women played central roles. These were not just family-centered roles but spiritual, economic, and political as well. Let's take a closer at two groups that really show this. First, the Tibuli tribe in Mindanao and the Ifugao people in the northern Luzon. Starting in the Tibuli tribe from South Cotabato, their culture is a powerful example of matrifocal tradition. Tibuli women are not just homemakers. They are spiritual leaders, cultural guardians, and highly respected artisans. One of their most important contributions is weaving the tinalak, a traditional cloth with sacred patterns believed to be received in dreams by female weavers. Even more, property and artistic knowledge are often passed through the woman, giving them authority and lasting influence in their communities. Now, ngayon naman is yung sa Northern Luzon, we find similar practices among the Ifugao. Before colonization, Ifugao women played essential roles in managing the famous rice terraces. Yes, yung famous rice terraces, or yung Banawi rice terraces. Those magnificent stair-like fields carved into the mountains, these terraces were often passed down matrilineally, meaning women inherited and managed the land. Women also participated in rituals and community decision-making, which show how deeply they were trusted in both spiritual and social matters. So, bakit nga ang mga practices na to is significant? Because they reveal something powerful. Before, outside influence shaped our society into a more patriarchal system. Women in the Philippines already held respected leadership roles. This tradition proved that women were and still are central to the strength and stability of our communities. Even today, traces of these matriarchal roots remain. In many Filipino families, it's the mother or grandmother who makes the major decision, reflecting how the past still shape the present. To wrap up, these practices are not just part of the tribal or rural tradition. They are reminded of a time when Filipino culture honored the leadership, wisdom, and strength of women. And that's something we can and should be proud of.
How it is related to arts. Patriarchal practices in the Philippines are closely related to traditional arts because in many indigenous communities, women are the primary keepers, creators, and transmitters of cultural art forms. Here's how it's connected. In tribes like Tibuli of Mindanao, women are the only ones allowed to wave the sacred cloth called tinalak. This art is deeply spiritual, and the design are believed to come to them in their dreams. The role of the female waver is not just artistic but also cultural and religious, showing women's central place in preserving tradition. Among the Ifugao and Kalinga in northern Luzon, women have been long involved in textile weaving, body ornamentation, and ritual arts. These arts are passed down through matrilineal lines, showing the importance of women in keeping the culture alive. In many communities, folk dance, songs, storytelling, and embroidery are taught and preserved by women, linking matriarchal roles with the protection and continuation of heritage. Why it is significant? Because women in these communities often act as a guardian of tradition. Their role in art is a direct reflection of their matriarchal influence. They just don't make art, they keep the identity and the soul of the community alive through it.
Hi, I'm Agripino Bago Enriquez. Patriarchal community in the Philippines. A patriarchal community in the Philippines is one where men are seen as the main authority figures, shaping the structures of families, law, leadership, reflects both historical influences and cultural norms that have shaped much of Filipino society. Patriarchal values became more dominant after Spanish colonization in 1521, which brought Catholic beliefs in European customs. This emphasized male leadership, both in religion, like male priests, and society, like male rulers and landowners. Even today, many communities, especially in the lowland Christian areas, follow these structures. Men often lead in politics, business, and the church. Family names, property, and inheritance usually pass to the male line. Tradition, gender, roles are taught from a young age. That's all.
Okay, so let's also talk about how patriarchal community in the Philippines came about. The patriarchal system in the Philippines became dominant after the arrival of the Spanish in 1521 During the beginning of Spanish colonization, this shift primarily took place in lowland areas of Luzon and the Visayas, where native communities were more accessible and quickly brought under the colonial control. Time and place is the date began in 1521, formalized by the 1565 Spanish colonization under Miguel Lopez de Legazpi. And the place is mainly in lowland Christianized regions Manila, Cebu, Iloilo, and other coastal areas where Spaniards built settlements and missions. The groups involved are Spanish colonizers, brought European patriarchal norms including male-led household, male-dominated political and religious institutions, inheritance passed through the male line, and Catholic Church, which introduced the religion's teachings that reinforced male leadership, like only men could become priests or hold church authority, promoted the idea of women being obedient and focused on domestic roles. And lastly is indigenous lowland Filipinos is native groups in areas like Tagalog, Ilonggo, and Cebuano. Communities were converted to Christianity and gradually adopted Spanish patriarchal customs, often replacing or suppressing more equal or more matrifocal systems. And let's talk about how it happened. The Spanish established a colonial government and church hierarchy where only men had formal power. Next is reduction policies, forcing communities to resettle in organized towns, place families under church and male-led systems. Education and legal systems, introduced by the Spanish, reinforced gender roles, teaching boys leadership and girls domesticity. And the summary of this is patriarchal systems in the Philippines began around 1521 and to 1565, spreading through Spanish rule in the Christianized rural areas of Luzon and Visayas, influenced by Spanish authorities, Catholic clergy, and native lowland groups. The traditional gender balance in many communities was replaced by a system where men held formal authority in religion, politics, and family. Patriarchal practices introduced during Spanish colonization and became meaning and significant to the Philippine level.
How their practices became unique and significant to society. How it became unique. Number 1. Blending of Spanish and Filipino traditions. Patriarchal roles were fused with local customs, creating a hybrid family structure. For example, while the father was made the official head, the mother was still had strong informal influence, especially in family decisions. This makes the Filipino family unique, both patriarchal in form and matrifocal in function, a unique cultural feature. Number 2. Integration in religion. The Catholic Church introduced male-only priesthood, replacing local spiritual practices where women once led rituals. Over time, religious feasts, traditions, and values reinforce the image of the father as the protector and provider, especially through saints like San Jose or Saint Joseph, the model father figure. And number 3, legal and inheritance systems. Spanish laws like Código Civil, Spanish Civil Code of 1889, enforce male inheritance rights and father-led households. This changed Filipino inheritance customs, which has been more flexible or matrilineal in some religions. So, why it became significant? Number 1, shape modern family dynamics. The idea of father as the head of family remains legally and socially recognized in many Filipino households today. Respect for elders and male authority became a cultural norm, still reflected in modern titles like Padre de Familia or the Father of the Family. Number 2, influenced national leadership patterns. Men have traditionally dominated politics, law, and businesses, especially during Spanish and American periods, continuing into the present. And number 3, education and values system. Boys were educated to lead, while girls were taught to serve or support. This created a long-lasting gender role expectation in schools and families. In conclusion, patriarchal roles practices became unique in the Philippines by mixing Spanish male-dominated system with local traditions, especially in Luzon, Visayas. During 16th and 19th centuries, they became significant by defining gender roles, family authority, religion, and leadership structures, shaping Filipino society from colonial period to today. That's it.
This time, I'll be talking about how patriarchal practices influence the development and control of the arts in the Philippines, especially during and after the Spanish colonial period from 1565 to 1898. So, let's go. Let's explore. So, particularly ito sa mga Christianized lowland communities tulad ng Manila, Cebu, and Iloilo. So, first, yung control of religious art. During the Spanish era, the Catholic Church, led mainly by male priests and friars, it had a huge influence on art production. They oversaw large-scale projects like Baroque churches, elaborate retablos or altar pieces, and religious sculpture. This artwork often highlighted male religious figures such as Jesus Christ, male saints, and clergy. This reinforced a male-centered religious structure where men held authority, both spiritually and artistically. Second is suppression of female and indigenous expression. Before colonization, women played important roles in traditional art. They were leaders in weaving, tattooing, and ritual dance, formed deeply tied to indigenous spirituality. However, with the rise of Christianity and Spanish rule, these were labeled as pagan or backward. The focus shifted toward Western or male-dominant art, pushing aside female and indigenous expressions. Pangatlo, male-dominated training and patronage. Formal art education also reflected patriarchy. For example, the Academia di Dibujo e Pintura in Manila, established in 1821, was mostly accessible to men. Yun, ba? Yung paralan na Academia di Dibujo e Pintura. As a result, famous names in Philippine art history like Juan Luna and Fernando Amorsolo were male artists trained in Western art styles. They benefit from systems that excluded most women from formal artistic development. Fourth is yung themes reflecting gender rules. Artworks from this era promoted idealized gender roles. Men were portrayed as heroes, leaders, and martyrs, while women were shown as modest, religious, and domestic. Think of the Maria Clara image. These portrayals were consistent across different art forms, including painting, literature, theater, and even church decorations. So, sa kabuuan, patriarchal system controlled art production through male-dominated institution. Pangalawa, male religious and societal figure were centered in both visual and performing arts. Pangatlo, women's contribution were often marginalized or confined to what were considered domestic or traditional crafts. As a result, Philippine art during and after the colonial period not only reflects creativity but also the social structure of the time, where men held formal authority in most artistic spaces. Thank you.